14. January 1958. Köln, Bundesrepublik Deutschland. A man in a rented office writes a line he will never speak aloud. I used to file transport lists. Now I file life insurance contracts. Paper does not care what it records. He signs the page with a single initial. K. He is an insurance agent on Hohenzollern-Ring. He is a husband and a father. He is also a former SS camp clerk whose handwriting exists in another archive. The mathematics of survival in post-war Germany begins with bricks. March 1945. Cologne is a cathedral standing in a sea of debris. The British enter first, then American units. The city is 1/4 intact by volume, by the simplest arithmetic of standing walls to flattened blocks. A senior captain in a British civil affairs unit writes in an occupation report, "The inhabitants are subdued. They are hungry. They are fearful of vengeance." Curfews go up at 8 p.m., then 9 p.m. Loudspeakers announce orders in German and halting phonetic repeats. Tremmerfrauen arrive with baskets and handcarts. Women in coats, sleeves rolled. Municipal photographs in the Stadtarchiv document. Teams on Venloer Straße, cleaning bricks, stacking good from bad in strict lines. Each brick is a calorie and a future wall. It is mathematics. 15 bricks to pave a meter, 200 to build a waist-high course. The arithmetic of rebuilding is done by hand and by memory. There are posters on message boards. Gesucht, Maria H. Geboren 1922. Letzte Nachricht Jan, 1945, Ostpreußen. Missing persons notices multiply, tacked in layers. The Bundesarchiv holds hundreds of them in brittle folders titled Heimatlos. Each paper is a question without an answer. A soldier's letter returns unopened. A family turns inward. K returns to Cologne in late May 1945, thin as wire. He has been released from a holding cage outside Hildesheim. He tells the American debriefers that he was clerical staff attached to a supply unit. He has memorized a story of ranks and numbers that avoids the letters S and S together. He signs a temporary pass and an affidavit. The Allied intelligence summary in his district notes, interrogation reveals minimal information. Subject claims non-party status. It is like a scale tipping by grams. His wife, L, is living with her sister in a basement off Severinstrasse. She is pale. She has ration cards that list his name again when he returns. They add up the coupons on the table. They count potatoes in a sack. They count matches. The mathematics of marriage after collapse is small and precise. He says little. The first winter is the hunger winter. 1946 to 1947 is known in oral histories as the Steckruben winter, turnip winter. Official ration in Cologne in February 1947, 1,004 calories per day, according to a British Zone Logistics report. Men trade a coat for a sack of coal. Women barter. Cigarettes prove the only reliable currency. 1 American cigarette equals 3 to 5 Reichsmarks, then more as time goes on. A loaf of bread costs a handful. In a black market den under a half-standing factory near Ehrenfeld, a notebook from a British Provost Marshal raid lists the prices. 4 cigarettes for a kilo of rye flour. 2 for a tin of condensed milk. The mathematics of hunger is exact and brutal. K walks with a pocket of cigarettes he will not smoke. He trades them for paper, ration books with extra meat coupons. A double, a card you can eat or sell. He does both. May 1945 to 1948 is also the time of denazification. Fragebogen, questionnaires written in German with an exactness that creates a new kind of silence. 131 questions in the American sector, fewer in the British. Name, date of birth, membership in the NSDAP, in the SS, SA, position in subscriptions to party newspapers, witness statements, the The forms are printed on grey paper. They carry the chill of bureaucratic sunlight. Sprechkammer. Hearing chambers staffed by Germans under Allied oversight. The Sprechkammerakten in Cologne are stacked by case number. K's case is there in principle if not preserved by name. The categories are fixed: Hauptschuldige, major offenders; belastet offenders, minder belastet offenders; Mitläufer followers; Entlastetete exonerated. The arithmetic of guilt is codified in 5 boxes. The mathematics of redemption is a stamp. Ordinary people reassemble their pasts by subtraction. A factory manager in a testimony dated 12 March 1947, I was compelled to join. I never attended meetings. A teacher's line, I preferred not to read the Volkische Beobachter. A station master's statement, we all simply followed orders. It was a dictatorship. The passive voice becomes a shelter. It is a grammar of memory that multiplies. Doctors, engineers, chauffeurs. Many claim no choice. Many had choices. K writes in his own hand, I was office staff. I accounted for stores. I did not participate in persecution. I was not a party member. He hides the badge, the pin, the assignment to a camp administrative section. He has his cousin, a baker with a good reputation, sign a Perselschein, a certificate of good moral conduct. It is literally called a Persel certificate, like the soap. It washes clean on paper. Sprechkammer, file not listed here, category assigned, Mitläufer, a follower. The system wants stability. The American Office of Military Government, OMG-GUS, issues an internal memo in late 1946 noting the necessity of preventing economic paralysis. Allied intelligence summaries emphasize the importance of experienced administrators and technicians, party background notwithstanding. Total removals produce total stoppage. There is a balancing act between justice and function. The mathematics of state stability trumps the mathematics of moral arithmetic. A person who signed Nazi-era contracts is allowed to sign contracts again. The categories loosen. Penalties shorten. The prisons hold major offenders until they do not. Many go to office desks. The rest go home. In the British zone, displaced persons' camps rise near town edges. Jews from Poland, Hungary, Latvia, Ostarbeiter from Ukraine and Belarus, Italian POWs. There is a DP camp at Mungersdorf on the edge of Cologne, set up in 1945 in barracks and sports facilities. The British rename it Stalag conditions reversed. At Bergen-Belsen, the camp becomes a DP center. At Ferchenwald in the American zone, a town within a town grows under Jewish self-administration. The reports are precise. A British Army Medical Corps officer writes in 1946, the Jewish DP community in the British zone exhibits vital signs of life despite malnutrition and scarcity. Requests for transfer to Palestine are common. German civilians pass the fences on their way to work. Children stare. The moral map alters. A woman in an oral history recorded in 1983 in Cologne says, only then we saw how thin they were. We did not know. My husband said we were never told. It is a recurring sentence. We did not know. It coexists with other sentences. A man who worked near a rail yard writes in a letter withheld for decades, we saw trains at night. We knew something. Not what, we say now, but something. K's knowledge is different. He is a clerk. He knows the freight of words. He knows that Transportliste 2743 contains names, numbers, and destinations that map onto graves. He knows his old office was a wooden barrack labeled Verwaltung, with a ledger, 2 adding machines, an ink pad, a picture of the Führer on the wall. The Bundesarchiv holds the paper trails. B62 contains cards and lists confiscated by Allied investigators. Many names are blacked out in publications. The paper remains admittedly neutral. It records without caring. He learns this with the clarity of a man not speaking. The expulsions create a second migration, 1945 to 1949. Königsberg empties. Silesian villages empty. The Sudeten Germans are driven and carried westward. 12 million by one count, 14 by another. The arithmetic of bodies on roads rivals the war. The humanitarian work is unpoetic. Trains arrive at the Cologne freight yard from the east via Hanover and Bochum. They carry families with bundles and bundles with ash. The municipal housing office in Cologne, the Wohnungsamt, issues a directive in September 1946. Each apartment will take in at least one expellee family. A register lists names and square meters. 52 means he becomes two families. It is not fair. It is arithmetic. Locals resent newcomers. A prevailing phrase in complaints collected by a district mayor between 1947 and 1949. We suffered too. Tension is everywhere in small lines. A woman from Breslau explains to a housing officer that she will gladly share space but not her linens. A local replies that his own linens burned in the firestorm of 1943. The black market absorbs them all impartially. Cigarettes cross all lines. Karl works where paper leads. With his Spruchkammer category determined and the city in need of hands, he finds a post in 1949 in an office in the Social Welfare Department, tasked with registering expellee claims and hard case allotments of coal. He learns the new names for old things. Ausgleichszahlung, compensation. Wohnberechtigungsschein, housing entitlement certificate. Baumaterialanspruch, construction material entitlement. He stamps each with his number. Some files hold affidavits of losses in the East. Others hold statements by survivors of camps, now requesting reparation under the emerging Bundesentschädigungsgesetz. The paperwork looks the same to the eye. He knows better to the core. He never says so. Across the way, a man named Vogt, a barber, runs a side business as a valuta broker. He sells hard currency and buys stories. He is interviewed in an Allied counterintelligence report in 1948, detailing the flow of American cigarettes after the currency reform of 20 June 1948. That reform is a line in the city's life. Overnight, old money loses its weight. Deutsche Mark notes arrive in sealed packages. Wages convert at 1001 up to an amount. Then debts shrink. Savings shrink. Savings shrink. The black market loses oxygen. Store windows fill overnight with goods held back, a phenomenon recorded in headlines and remembered in family speeches. The mathematics of scarcity shifts from food to furnishings, then to apartments and cars. Parliament to the west becomes a government. 23 May 1949. Bonn stands in for a capital. Adenauer speaks of order. The Cold War sharpens. The Berlin airlift the year before is already legend in numbers. More than 278,000 flights. 2.3 million tons. It is the kind of arithmetic that keeps children alive and cement pores. West Germans understand that they are now good allies if they are reliable consumers and workers. Karl is good at the neutral languages of rebuilding. Risk, premium, beneficiary. In 1953, he leaves the municipal office for a position with a large insurance firm with a regional branch in Cologne. He has a courteous manner. He visits expellee families who have made it to a stable income by 1955. He sits at kitchen tables beneath prayer cards and a portrait of a lost Silesian farmhouse. He sells them an endowment policy for their son. He uses a mortality table. He uses a rate book. He translates the mathematics of mortality into monthly payments. It is a different arithmetic than transport lists by structure. It is precisely the same in method. Names, numbers, dates, the paper does not tremble. Bundesarchiv records from the 1950s record the federal level of the West German rebuilding machine. Marshall Plan shipments tallied in checklists, ball bearings, fertilizers, grain, dollars computed into machines. The Wirtschaftswunder is visible in engineering diagrams and factory orders. It is also visible in photographs of men in new suits and women in new dresses in public parks on Sundays. Volkswagen expands. BASF hums. Siemens extends lines. The Köln Hauptbahnhof gains a clock that works and platforms that are paved. Television arrives. In 1956, 20,000 sets in Cologne. In 1958, over 100,000. A new arithmetic exceeds needs. The lines for butter are replaced by lines for tickets. The war appears further away. But the arithmetic of guilt remains. The public story narrows. School books used in North Rhine-Westphalia in 1955 cover the Nazi period in a spiral of causality that emphasizes inflation, Versailles, and Hitler's dictatorship as a structure that happened to people rather than something many enabled. The pages on the Holocaust are short. Bombing gets longer sections. Expulsions occupy spreads with maps and sympathetic photographs of trekking mothers and children. It is true suffering. It is also a pattern. The war after the war becomes a contest of emphasis. Public commemorations change, but carefully. A monument rebuilt in 1954 in the Altermarkt lists den Gefallenen der Weltkrieg und den Opfern von Krieg und Gewaltschaft, to the fallen of the world wars and the victims of war and tyranny. It saves the conscience by widening the category. It places victims and perpetrators in a shared grammatical space that equalizes moral dimensions. It comforts families who lost sons to the Eastern Front. It does not name Jews, Roma, the disabled, homosexuals, political prisoners, and others by category. There are exceptions. There are local efforts. There is the slow work of remembrance in hidden corners. But the arithmetic of commemoration at mid-century leans toward national suffering. In the Denazification files, numbers tell what language softens. By 1948, in the American zone, less than 0.1% are classified as hauptschuldig. A small number go to prison. More receive fines. Many receive occupation bans that are lifted by amnesties in 1949 and 1954. The system needed people in chairs. The state needed people in chairs. The state needed continuity in back offices. The East goes differently. The Soviet zone conducts a deeper purge of prominent Nazis, but also uses the apparatus to settle local scores. Land reform occurs. Collective farms follow. The later GDR tells a story of collective anti-fascism that forgives itself by decree. Relatives in Leipzig write to Cologne of shortages and political meetings, of humor in long lines. Letters cross at delayed intervals. Their stamps are heavy. Karl keeps them in a drawer. The mirror of the Cold War is moral as well as military. Each Germany constructs a past that justifies its present. Contact with victims intensifies and recedes. Jewish survivors sue. They file claims. A file from a reparations court in Cologne, dated 1957, lists a survivor born in 1920 in Siaud. He spent 2 years in camps and 2 more in DP camps. He emigrated to the United States in 1951 and writes through a lawyer in Frankfurt. He is seeking compensation for lost education and health damage. The line items include a physician's report of lung injury and recurring nightmares. The judge, the mathematics of Wiedergutmachung, is a compensation table mediated by a bureaucrat's eye. It is a small attempt at moral conversion into marks. It is inadequate. It is better than nothing. It is both truths at once. Carl's company requires him to review claims from policyholders who died in air raids or on the front. Their beneficiaries are wives, now elderly, children, now grown. He checks police reports from 1943 to 1944. He consults a yellowing map of shelters. He calls the Staatssparkasse for a wartime account balance. He processes a claim on a policy taken out in 1938 by a man who joined the SS in 1933, died in 1943, died in 1944, and left behind a widow who never joined anything. He pays the widow. He processes a claim for a man who was deported to a camp and never returned. There is no policy. There is no payment. He stares at the paper and hears the sound of a stamp that is thicker than ink. Occupation reports in 1945 to 1946 record Germans brought to Tor camps, Bergen-Belsen, Buchenwald, Dachau. A British report on public reactions notes a spectrum: shock, tears, creep of denial. Some insisted these were stage-managed. The Allied films shown in town halls record gaunt men and bodies. The moral nerve is touched. It is not cauterized. A church in Cologne, 1947, hosts a talk by a pastor who protected some Jews, telling his congregation, "We must learn shame." The parish is polite. The arithmetic is not dramatic. People leave the pews and return to lines for coal. In Karl's work life, money becomes language. Ludwig Erhard speaks of the soziale Marktwirtschaft, social market economy. The words sound weightless, they are precise. Wages rise by 1955. Trade union membership consolidates. Co-determination boards sit in factories. Industry grows. The standard of living is measured in refrigerators. The Marshall Plan's last tranches end. German capital reinvests. The country is accepted into NATO in 1955. The Bundeswehr forms. The official forgetting intensifies in one direction, even as trials proceed in another. A librarian in Cologne in 1952 orders new textbooks. The syllabus's single lesson on the Shoah is a paragraph. The rest covers Bismarck and grammar. The arithmetic of instruction privileges the past as heritage, not the past as mirror. Teachers also learn as they teach. Some flinch from detail. Some are themselves former party members in reduced categories, now restored by Article 31 of 1951, the law that reinstates pension rights for former civil servants. Stability is a currency. It is valued. K begins attending sales meetings in Dusseldorf and Frankfurt. He learns new phrases like customer retention and adverse selection. He is good with the widow across the table because he does not oversell. He is good with the small factory owner because he will not ask about the past and will accept export orders as proof of a future. His boss, born in 1910, served in Russia, wounded in 1942. They share a stoic grammar. They do not use the word complicity. They write premiums. They repair their country by building bank accounts and paying taxes. It is a civic religion without hymns. A boy in K's building reads a pamphlet in 1957 about the trial of a camp guard in Ulm. The newspapers are careful. The articles are factual and dry. They come and go. The boy asks his mother what a camp was. She chooses one sentence: a bad place. The mathematics of explanation is lesson by spoon. The boy grows up to protest in 1968. That is not yet. In the late 1940s, Karl was audited by military government for employment suitability. In the mid-1950s, no one asks again. Audits give way to trust. An Allied intelligence summary in 1949 predicted that the German people's capacity for order and work makes reconstruction likely to succeed, and used the word forgetting not at all. Forgetting is what a system does to itself by emphasizing rules it can satisfy. K's notebooks contain profit goals for quarters. They also contain short lines he writes when he cannot sleep. I filed lists of names in ink. I file names still. The expellees keep their dialects and hold festivals. Tag de Heimat becomes a fixture. Speeches call for memory of lost lands. The arithmetic of loss is public and legitimate. The Jewish community in Cologne rebuilds slowly, painfully. In 1959, the synagogue on Runstrasse is reconsecrated after repair. Stones are visible where quick hands left traces. A small community returns to prayer behind doors that were once smashed. There are police outside. There is silence inside. At the Weihnachtsmarkt in 1956, a woman from Silesia buys a wood carving of an angel. She tells Karl of her brother, who died in 1945 by the Oder. She tells him of her mother, who died on the road to Thuringia. He nods. He does not tell her that his numbers once helped send men to camps further south. He sells her a policy for burial costs, small but significant. He calculates the premium using a table developed by actuaries in 1931. Tables survive their authors. The arithmetic continues. Allied occupation ends by law in 1955. Sovereignty returns. The occupying powers keep bases. The RAF still flies from German runways. American soldiers walk Rhine parks with Coca-Cola in hands. Children practice English phrases like "okay" and "all right." A new German identity takes shape that holds grief in a side pocket, like a letter you cannot bring yourself to mail or throw away. The mathematics of identity includes additions and deletions. The older generation does not speak. The younger has not yet asked. The files close softly. Denazification files enter archives. Researchers in later decades read them by appointment. Names are redacted. Lives are reconstructed. At the time, they are warehouse records of shame and exoneration. Spruchkammer reports include formulas for fines. They include phrases like political reliability affirmed by 3 witnesses. People trade character as currency. People trade character as currency. Pastors are powerful. The mathematics of rehabilitated citizenship is a social proof problem disguised as law. The Cold War colors everything gray. When Bei all den Jahren of the 1950s are counted, a new Germany emerges with a parliament, courts, and police that are full of people who are older under the old regime and have not changed heights. The public story moves from collective guilt to collective service, rebuild, pay taxes, vote. There is truth in that story. There is also absence. Film reels of Nuremberg are shown occasionally in schools. The list of major offenders is always short. The list of mid-level staff is long and unlisted. Karl lives this arithmetic. On some days, he runs into a man on Severinstrasse who recognizes him from before. They exchange a nod that is not friendly and not hostile. It is an acknowledgement that life is a hallway with many doors, and they are both moving forward by not opening some of them. His daughter brings home a school assignment about what her parents did in the war. He writes "bookkeeper" and hands the paper back. He keeps a thin second notebook on a shelf above his desk. It contains clipped numbers. 20. June 1948. 23 May 1949. 5 May 1955. 1 April 1957. Dates of events and figures of currency. He writes a line on 14 January 1958 because he has read a story in the paper about a trial opening in Frankfurt against lower-level camp staff. He cannot sleep. He writes to name what paper makes invisible. He writes a dangerous sentence that would jeopardize his job. He writes it as a confession to himself. He will tear it out later, then hide it under accounts. He is both conscientious and pragmatic. He is both complicit and small. 1958, West Germany. I used to file transport lists. Now I file life insurance contracts. Paper does not care what it records. After he writes it, he thinks of the winter of 1946 when he walked to a farm outside Leverkusen to barter a wedding ring for potatoes. He thinks of the woman who weighed the sack with a practiced hand. He thinks of the way morality can be measured in grams when there is not enough to eat. He thinks of the neighbor who spaced herself in the rubble line at dawn. He thinks of a file in a drawer marked Wiedergutmachung with a name that passed across his old lists years earlier, and he feels a weight that is not numerate. In a British Civil Affairs report from April 1945, the author writes, "It is our impression that Germans have the ability to compartmentalize the past and proceed with astonishing efficiency." The line is clinical, observed. It is also an indictment and a compliment. It anticipates a nation of tidy desks and sealed memories. In an oral history recorded in 1990, a Cologne insurance man remembers the 1950s as a decade of quiet optimism and silent dread. He says, "We knew we were building something good. We knew we could not talk about something bad. It was as if we had decided that our children would be the ones to say it." He does not give his name. His voice on tape is careful. It could be Kay's voice. It could be any of thousands. The arithmetic of rooms is solved by new buildings. The arithmetic of food is solved by new fields and imported corn. The arithmetic of money is solved by new marks. The arithmetic of guilt is not solved. It is balanced by silence on a ledger that cannot be audited by court. The war after the war is fought in diaries, not trenches. It is fought in the passive voice of minutes and memos. It is fought over coffee and cake with the past seated invisibly, taking no sugar. Schoolbooks change slowly by the end of the 1950s. New editions include more pages on persecution. Civic groups organize tours of memorial sites. The Cologne synagogue is attacked by anti-Semites in 1959. Public outrage is loud. Trials in the 1960s bring old names into open mouth. The arithmetic of excuses breaks under a wave of student questions. That is later. In 1958, Kay hears only a low rumble. He writes once more in his notebook under the line he cannot say, "A policy is a promise in a file. A transport list was an order in a file. I am learning the difference." He knows that the difference is not just in intent but in system. He knows that systems are built by people like him who make forms and fill them. He knows that paper is a tool, not a conscience. On a Sunday in winter, he walks past the ruins of a church that now has a new roof and fresh paint. Inside, a plaque lists the dead. The names are many. They are alphabetized. The format, to his eye, is perfect. Part of him wants to speak to the pastor about a different plaque, a smaller one that would name something that was done in their name, in their place's name. He does not. He returns home to prepare his accounts for the week. His daughter is studying for real Schule exams. She asks him an arithmetic question. He answers without thinking. He is good with numbers. He is better with silence. When he dies, in a decade not included here, his notebooks will be thrown out in a clean-out of the apartment by his son. A single page might survive. Maybe the line survives. Maybe it does not. What survives is the system at large and the lives built within it. In the Bundesarchiv, cases remain. In company archives, policy roles remain. In compensated lives, modest gravestones rise by the Rhine. The mathematics of the country since 1945 becomes the sum of what was built and what cannot be undone. The arithmetic of memory runs through private balance sheets. The opening line is a confession disguised as paperwork. It is the axis on which this story turns. A man who once wrote to send lives away now writes to insure lives against what can be paid for. The paper he handles is impartial and precise. He leans its way. Kay's last written sentence in that January notebook, echoing himself more than once, is the country's balance sheet written in a clerk's hand. I used to file transport lists. Now I file life insurance contracts. Paper does not care what it records, but I do, and the front line runs through my memory and my paperwork, not across a battlefield.